Welcome to Sinners to Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel where we talk about Dungeons and Dragons and try and come up with builds and concepts that really work with the darker parts of our character. If you like what we do here, please like, share, and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into today's video, the School of Evocation Wizard. The School of Evocation Wizard comes to us from the player's handbook. This is that blasty wizard. This has a lot of abilities that cater towards throwing AoE spells and high damage arcane destruction. If you like Fireball and it feels really at home in your hands, this is a subclass that you really want to pay attention to because it can really involve you deeply into the inner workings of what a wizard can do in that capacity. That being said, it's a great setup for a character because you can really hone in on patience, hatred, and intelligence. Because yeah, your character knew at some point they had arcane potential. So they went and they studied and they were dedicated and patient to learn all these abilities. Maybe they never forget an insult or a dirty look, and they just wait for that perfect moment to rain fire down on entire villages. And the whole purpose, whatever they went to school for, was for them to exact their revenge. You're a wizard, you don't have to be good. You're a wizard, you can be those vile characters like Saruman from Lord of the Rings, or really any other evil wizard you can think of. There's no reason for you to have all this power and waste it. At second level, you gain access to Evocation Savant. When you select this school at second level, the golden time you must spend to copy an evocation spell into your spellbook is halved. This is really here to keep it tight-knit on your expenditure on resources needed to cast spells. Because if you're spending all of your gold on copying spells into your spellbook, you won't have enough gold to buy your 1,000 gems or special items needed to cast higher level spells. It's not exactly a fun mechanic, but if you're playing in a game where the setting has very tight regulations on magic, this is a great way to keep that in force. It's not necessarily a huge ordeal because, again, a lot of the times you don't have to give them these items. This usually comes down to stealing enemy spellbooks, which is something I really encourage people to do whenever they fight a wizard. At second level, you also gain access to Sculpt spell. You create pockets of relative safety within the effects of your evocation spells. When you cast an evocation spell that affects other creatures that you can see, you can choose a number of them equal to 1 plus the spell's level. The chosen creatures automatically succeed on their saving throw against the spell, and they take no damage if they would normally take half damage on a successful save. This does a lot for you. This gives your AoE abilities to not necessarily be so articulated with their placement. You can just throw them wherever. You can make 4 people in a fireball radius take no damage. This is great for helping your teammates. This is also great for maximizing the amounts of targets you can hit, especially things that are a little harder to use like lightning bolt where it's a straight line. Understand this gives you a couple of other things. First and foremost, it gives you a great way to describe what your spells look like. If you're casting Burning Hands and your party member happens to be right in the middle of it, you can now describe your flames as 2 flame snakes that erupt from your hands that circle around your party member and just explode and everything in between. Also, how this affects your spell casting should affect your wizard. If your wizard is very evil and darkened and self-absorbed, this should bolster that narcissism. This should really make that character decide that they can play God by deciding who gets to survive and who doesn't. At 6th level, you gain access to Potent Cantrip. Your damaging cantrips affect even creatures that avoid the brunt of the effect. When a creature succeeds on a saving throw against your cantrip, the creature takes half the cantrip's damage, if any, but suffers no additional effect from the cantrip. This initially doesn't seem like it does much. One of the best examples of what makes this ability useful is Acid Splash. It can hit 2 creatures that are close to each other, yes, which is great, but that's not really why. If you're fighting something like a troll or something that regains health, Acid Splash does compensate so they do not regain health. Or Fire Damage. Firebolt will do this so that way they do not regain health. It does have practical abilities in the great metagaming circumstances of the world, but understand that's one great use of it, but also it helps bridge the gap between first level spells and cantrips. Eventually, through cantrips' natural progression, their damage die will outweigh that of first level spells. It's just the way it works. This helps to get that there a little bit quicker, and it makes you feel more comfortable in judging when to use a spell slot and a cantrip. It makes it a little bit more economical for you to use a cantrip as opposed to burning a spell slot when you're pretty sure they might make the save, or you're just not sure and you just don't feel good about it. You want to try something out first. This is a good way to judge that. This is a good way to judge how their saves are. At 10th level, you gain access to Empowered Evocation. You can add your intelligence modifier, a minimum of +1, to 1 damage roll of any wizard evocation spell that you cast. The caveat of any wizard evocation spell really has to do to limit your multi-classing options, though if you are a wizard, you're probably not multi-classing into anything that doesn't actually use your wizard spell list. That being said, this basically bumps up all of your spells almost a full spell slot higher. On average, a lot of the spells you'll be casting, the average roll will be 5. It's basically adding that on to every spell you cast. Also, this keeps you focused on Evocation's actual spells. There are damaging spells and cantrips that are not from the School of Evocation. Necromancy happens to have a bunch of them. That is very important to keep track of. This also works with your cantrips, so it does add on your modifier. It comes on a 10th level, which is still somewhat high. A lot of campaigns really don't go that much further, so it is a little bit late that you get this, but it does add up. So this is really to help bring your damage up to the forefront. It works with all of your evocation spells and abilities, and it helps really center that your use of this magic is special to you, because all wizards can cast evocation spells, but only you add that extra passion to it that lays waste to all those who oppose you. The final School of Evocation Wizard ability you gain is Overchannel. You can increase the power of your simpler spells. When you cast a wizard spell of 1st through 5th level that deals damage, you can deal maximum damage with that spell. The first time you do so, you suffer no adverse effects. If you use this feature again before you finish a long rest, you take 2d12 necrotic damage for each level of the spell immediately after you cast it. Each time you use this feature before finishing a long rest, the necrotic damage per spell level increases by 1d12, and this damage ignores resistance and immunity. This is an incredibly powerful ability. This means that your fireballs will always deal maximum damage. It is very rare to get even close to maximum damage with dice. This is very strong. It works on all of your abilities. With spells of 5th level, there aren't that many damage dealing spells that are really intricate and really going to pull you to cast them as opposed to others. So really take the time to look at your spell list. Vitrolic Sphere at 4th level is going to be increasingly valuable because of the maximum amount of damage being dealt guarantees that full amount of damage, because it all happens from that first cast, is all maximized. It will beat out Fireball. Fireball is always going to be a great consistent spell that you can use. Definitely get Elemental Adept if you're playing this subclass, because this is just one of those things that resistance is going to hinder and really bother you. But understand that you can do this for free once. You can just lay this out there as soon as you see a big group of enemies, and you will level things. And it is a huge amount of damage you'll be dropping. It is powerful. On top of that, it adds in your previous ability, so it will add Empowered Evocation to up that damage an additional. At this point, I imagine your intelligence modifier is +5, as it should be, on top of that damage. So enjoy this, because this is that moment where you are in a world without an equal. When you hit this level, you are the only one that can do this. You can hit things with spells that are lower level and deal more damage than people who are upcasting those same exact spells. This should make you feel powerful. This should really intermingle very well with this narcissistic build that you've been gaining and personality, because your powers are just growing, and this is just pure destructive power, and you have been unchecked. It is unfathomable the directions you can go when you let your abilities influence your character's role-playing potential and guide them. If you were teetering between good and bad, this can set you over the edge, because it's absolute power. Obviously, you don't want to be doing this constantly, because that 2d12 per spell slot level is a pretty mean thing to take, and there's nothing you can do to resist this. You are going to take the full amount. Our final thoughts. The wizard is one of those classes that has a lot of things that most people gravitate towards when they think of fantasy. They think of that long beard, that big hat, that Gandalf kind of wizard. But it's okay to go in a different direction. All your wizards don't have to be super old. It's just something that people do because it's a trope. Like, you can be young and be a wizard. The whole point of your character progressing in levels is to gain that strength and that prosperity and that ability. And you can do that at varying paces, because some of us all get better at things at different times. Breaking away from those tropes, you can be darker. You can be in any setting where you were just a thief that just broke in and just started studying spells, or you snuck in through the ceiling and just overheard in classes and didn't actually belong there, and because of that you coveted those people who did, and you hate them for having the things that you don't. And this is your way to use your own mind to help fight that and balance the equation the way you see fit, and make sure no one looks down at you again, and really encourage that breaking away from just, I went to school and I learned, or I came from a wealthy family, or everything was just taken care of. You can really build yourself from the ground up with a character like that, and you can really take into consideration the shortness of your life. Being a human wizard means you're not going to live long, so finding ways to dive into living longer and making spells make your vitality extend, or even lichdom, are all things that are really tangible things to races that don't have long lifespans. Like an elf, yeah, great, they'll live forever almost, and going to be a wizard doesn't take too much time out of their life, and it's easy for them. But the less years you have to spend alive, the more valuable power can be, because it's only there for a limited time, because you can only wield it for such a long time. Really try and pull that in and build some drive behind your wizards. Really make them want something. Like, the pursuit of intelligence and intellect is a great thing. Using that, a lot of wizards tend to have that great pull that just draws them to want to experience new things. And it's great, and it works because it makes your wizards adventurers. And that's something a lot of people tend to lose out in making a wizard, where they're just a wizard and they don't have a reason to go anywhere. Experiment with life and make that an intricate part with your wizards, because now you're taking it, you're manipulating it, you're destroying it. And you're an evocation wizard. Life is just an obstacle for your great desires. If you've made it this far, we want to thank you. Really appreciate everything you did and sticking through. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to hear you comment. Please like, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.